Yo, what is up, guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hope you guys are doing well. If you are new here, hit the subscribe button, and also if you could hit the like, it would be greatly appreciated. But I'm sure we've all heard the news that Haymon and the PBC are considering creating their own titles, and this topic has been discussed by boxing fans in the last few days. And really, I wanted to share my 2 cents on the whole, situation, and also come up with an alternative for the PBC instead of making their own title. But in regards to the title itself, the PBC have got a lot of challenges in regards to this. Ultimately, the first thing is, if they made a PBC belt, a lot of the boxing public will not recognise it as a major world title. The regular sanctioning bodies are always going to be seen as the greater prize because ultimately, theoretically, everybody has the chance or the ability to fight for a world title with any sanctioning body. They are open to everybody. Whereas a PBC belt, you would imagine, would be only locked down to the PBC fighters. And yes, PBC are strong in a couple of divisions, namely welterweight and 154, but in other divisions, their stable is quite weak. So if they had a PBC champion in a weight class where they had no real fighters, that belt is completely worthless because the champion won't have the opposition to fight, to defend that belt in a credible fashion. The way to make your belt credible, let's say you were to make a new belt, would be to have strong world champions from the get-go and make great fights. That would obviously be the best way to make the PBC belt legitimate. Maybe they could introduce a belt to the divisions they are strong in, but even then they are still ostracising world-class fighters from being able to fight for that belt. So it's not really a championship belt, it's not really a world title, it's a roster title, it's a title within your company. So, for me, the whole PBC belt idea is kind of pointless, it's kind of worthless. To tell you the truth, I wouldn't even be upset if they made a PBC belt. I just don't see it working out. Obviously, I'll sit back to see what happens, and if it works out, more power to them. I just can't see it happening. I can't see it working out. Like Boxing Beats and Rhyme said, take cruiserweight for example. Andrew Tabiti is the PBC's cruiserweight, their best cruiserweight. He obviously recently stepped outside of his comfort zone and entered the World Boxing Super Series, and he got smoked. If he were to become the first PBC cruiserweight champion, for example, that title would be an absolute joke, to be honest. So, the PBC have a lot going against them, to make this title legitimate, but, we'll see what happens with it, if it ever actually comes to fruition. I'm not against it. I'm not wishing them to fail, but I can't see it succeeding. I've got to be honest. However, I do believe there is a good alternative for the PBC if they do want to create their own silverware and, hardware. And that would be a PBC trophy, where essentially the divisions where the PBC are strong, they can make tournaments, whether that be a 4-man tournament or an 8-man tournament, and have a trophy at the end of it. For example, welterweight. They've got enough fighters to make a real welterweight tournament. Let's say, for argument's sake, Errol Spence Jr. is okay. You could have Errol Spence Jr., Manny Pacquiao, Keith Thurman, Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, Mikey Garcia, Yordenis Ugas, and maybe Jamal James. There's 8 welterweights there. And that tournament is competitive with world-class fighters. If they were to make that 8-man tournament with a PBC trophy at the end of it, I think that would be great for boxing. I think that would be great for boxing, and that is something legitimate, because there's multiple world-class fighters fighting in an elimination process until there's one man standing, and on top of that, you will have sanctioning body belts in the mix as well. Obviously, Pacquiao and Errol Spence hold belts. So that tournament, for example, would be extremely legit. It really would, and that PBC trophy at the end of it will actually have some prestige because the guy who managed to win it would have gone through hell and high water to get there. So that trophy would be a lot more valuable than a PBC title as far as I'm concerned. You could do something similar at 154, maybe a 4-man tournament. Jamel Charlo, Tony Harrison, Julian Williams, Brian Castano, Erislandy Lara. There's names you can throw in there. PBC could make these tournaments in their strong divisions and have a PBC trophy. I think that would be a great alternative to a PBC belt, because like I said, in these divisions where the PBC are strong, they can make some great fights, and in a tournament process, a trophy at the end of it would be a lot more legitimate, in my opinion. And I know some haters out there will say, oh, you're just biting off a World Boxing Super Series, the PBC is stealing that idea. Tournaments in boxing have always happened. Before the World Boxing Super Series, there was the Super 6. In the early 2000s, there was the middleweight tournament with Bernard Hopkins and Felix Trinidad, to name a couple of fighters. And obviously in the 80s, you had the HBO heavyweight tournament in which Mike Tyson won. So tournaments have always been a thing in boxing. If a PBC made their own tournament, they're not biting anybody's style. Like I say, tournaments have always gone on in boxing, and I think a tournament process for the PBC would be excellent. I really do. So that's my suggestion in regards to the PBC creating their own hardware. I'm not dead against a title belt, to be honest with you. I just don't think it would succeed, and I think it's pointless. It just makes boxing a bit more convoluted, and it kind of adds to that you're on the wrong side of the street culture that's going on in boxing right now. So yeah, I don't really see the point in the PBC belt, but like I say, at PBC tournaments, now we're talking. But anyway, share your thoughts below. Tell me what you think about this. Peace.